Hello everyone and welcome to Drive Steady. The Ford Mustang and the Chevrolet Camaro have a long history together, but in their 2020 models they're better than ever. So in this video we'll compare the 2020 Mustang and the 2020 Camaro specifications and take a look back at what got these two pony cars to this point. Before getting started, a big thank you to everyone who watches our videos and subscribes to our channel. We've got another video comparing the new C8 Corvette to the Porsche 992 Generation 911, so if you're interested, you can click in the upper right hand corner for that video. Additionally, if you have any cars that you would like for us to compare, send us a comment and we'd be happy to put something together. The Mustang and the Camaro have been around for quite some time now. When the Ford Mustang debuted in 1964, the pony car era was born. The Mustang project was led by the legendary Lee Iacocca and was based on the mid-engine Mustang 1 platform. The Mustang caught everyone by surprise. No one had a competitor for it. The rebuttal from Chevrolet to Ford's Mustang finally came in 1966 when the Camaro debuted and went on sale in 1967 in its first model year. The Camaro took a lot of influence from the Chevy Nova but morphed into a sports coupe. Fast forward to today, the 2020 Mustang and Camaro have refreshed looks, better looking interiors, and eye-opening performance. That's a brief history of the Mustang and the Camaro to start. Now let's compare the 2020 Mustang and the 2020 Chevrolet Camaro. Alright, before getting started, some insight into the comparison. When comparing the 2020 Mustang and Camaro, I'll be looking at the standard V8 versions. No 4 or 6 cylinders, no high trim levels like the ZL1, GT350, GT500, just the straight base V8 trim levels. In the Mustang, it's going to be the GT, of course, and in the Camaro, it's the new LT1. Okay, on with the comparison. The first category will be the engine, horsepower, and torque. The 2020 Mustang GT comes with a naturally aspirated 32-valve double overhead cam 5-liter engine codenamed Coyote. The Coyote engine also wears the ever-popular 5.0 nameplate and pumps out 460 horsepower and 420 foot-pounds of torque with an impressive redline of 7,400 RPM. The Camaro, on the other hand, has a new base trim level that comes with a V8. It's called the Camaro LT1. I was surprised to see this trim level. I've always thought that if you wanted a V8 in the Camaro, you had to get the SS, but not anymore, I suppose. So the Camaro LT1 is also fitted with a naturally aspirated engine like the Mustang, but takes a slight departure from the double overhead cam design and has a single overhead cam 16-valve V8 with 6.2 liters of displacement and codenamed LT1. The LT1 engine pumps out 455 horsepower and 455 pounds-feet of torque with a 6,500 RPM redline. Both of these cars come standard with 6-speed manual transmissions but have 10-speed automatics available if you choose. Comparing these two engines, the Mustang comes with 5 more horsepower and the Camaro has the upper hand in torque with 35 more. And if you're a redline type of guy or gal, the Mustang bests the Camaro by 900 RPMs. Both of these engines make similar horsepower, but predictably, the 32-valve double overhead cam engine in the Mustang has a higher redline, but the larger displacement in the Camaro develops more torque. As I did in the Corvette and 911 comparisons, I'm going to look at the history of power and torque for these two cars. Same guidelines go for the historical charts. The first model year, standard V8 trim, no higher performance trims. Regarding all the historical info, I try to be as accurate as possible and get the numbers from official sources, so these numbers should be within the ballpark, if not exact hits. First, let's look at the Mustang. The first generation started with the 1964.5 model year, and it came with a modest 164 horsepower and an impressive 258 pounds-feet of torque. A couple notable items: in 1974, the Mustang II didn't come with a V8. It came with a 4 or 6 cylinder. The V8 wasn't put in the Mustang II until the 1975 model year. So to stay true to what I originally mentioned about comparing V8s, I'm going to use the 1975 model year for the Mustang II. The third generation Mustang was in production for the longest period of time, from 1979 through 1993, and produced many cool cars like the Fox Body Coupe and the Mustang SSP police cars. Here are the percentile increases in horsepower from generation to generation in the Mustang. The chart tells us that the Mustang started off with a decent amount of power but remained stagnant in the second and third generations, but then started to gain steam starting in the fourth, fifth, and through the sixth generation with 40, 45, and 5% increases respectively. From its inception in 1964 through the current 2020 model year, the Mustang has gained 296 horsepower from 164 to 460. Alright, so now let's look at the Camaro. The first generation of the Camaro was in 1967 and it came with a 327 cubic inch V8 pumping out 210 horsepower and an impressive 320 foot-pounds of torque. A couple points of observation in the Camaro. The second generation was the longest produced, lasting 12 years from 1970 through 1982. I know the second generation sometimes doesn't get the love the other generations do, but I personally like the second gen a lot. Here's a history of horsepower increases throughout the generations represented in percentage differences. The Camaro followed a similar trend the Mustang did with a robust start at 210 horsepower, but then slowed down in the second generation and had a sharp decline in the third generation, then started to pick up a lot of steam with the fourth, fifth, and sixth generations. From its inception in 1967 through the current 2020 model year, the Camaro has gained 245 horsepower from 210 to 455. Now let's talk about the 0 to 60 times. The Mustang with the performance package and the 10-speed auto gets to 60 in an astonishing 3.9 seconds and 4.3 seconds in the manual. The Camaro gets from 0 to 60 in 4 seconds flat with the automatic and 4.3 seconds with the manual. So the 0 to 60 statistic is pretty much even with these cars in both the manual and automatic transmissions. It's not a surprise, especially in the automatic version, because the 10-speed auto in both of these cars is practically the same unit. Next, let's talk about the curb weight. As a reminder, the curb weight is the full operating weight of the car. The Mustang comes in at 3,705 pounds with a manual transmission, and the Camaro comes in at 3,685 pounds for a negligible difference of 20 pounds between these two cars. Alright, so the weight is a major topic in this segment, but let's look at the history of weight between these cars and how much they have gained throughout the years. So here's that chart. Look at how light the first generation Mustang is, 2,881 pounds. Notice there's a drop in weight, a little over 10% from the second generation to the third generation of the Mustang. The reason for that was because Lee Iacocca wanted the Mustang to get smaller and lighter. But from there on out, the Mustang, like many other cars, has grown in the weight department. The total weight gain through the Mustang's life cycle is 823 pounds. In the Camaro, the 1967 model started out at 2,920 pounds. With the Camaro's story, it's a little different. The weight gain was steady all throughout its life cycle, but many people started complaining about it in the fifth generation, so Chevrolet reduced the weight significantly with the sixth generation. So while the Mustang lost a lot of weight early on in its life cycle, the Camaro has lost weight in its most current generation. That's good for all the current Camaro fans. The total weight gain throughout the Camaro's life cycle is 765 pounds. Okay, now that we know the power and the weight, let's look at an often overlooked metric, and that's the power to weight ratio. The power to weight ratio is calculated by taking the horsepower of the car and dividing it by the weight. The higher the number, the better the performance. So the 2020 Mustang, you take 460 horsepower and you divide it by 3,705 pounds and you get a power to weight ratio of 1.24. In the Camaro, you take 455 horsepower and you divide it by 3,685 pounds and you get 1.23. I usually pay close attention to power to weight ratio because typically when you have cars this close, in this case separated by only a tenth, they will perform almost equally, and you can see that in the 0 to 60 times and later on in the quarter mile as well. If you're into getting the most horsepower for your buck, this next metric is for you. Now we'll measure the horsepower per dollar ratio. A base Mustang GT has an MSRP of $35,630. You take that and you divide it by 460 and you get $77.45 per horsepower. On the flip side, the Camaro LT1 comes in at a base price of $34,000 even, so take that and divide it by 455 and you get $74.72. The LT1 trim from Chevrolet really makes this an interesting discussion. It undercuts the cheapest Mustang by $2.73 per horsepower. The Camaro LT1 is definitely interesting if all you're after is horsepower and a V8 engine. Next, let's talk about the quarter mile times. I couldn't find anything published by Ford regarding the quarter mile time, but Motor Trend and Car and Driver both clocked the 2018 Mustang GT with the 10-speed automatic and the performance package at 12.1 seconds at 118 miles per hour. In the manual, they were able to run the Mustang GT at 12.6 at 115 miles per hour. On the flip side, Car and Driver ran the Camaro SS with the automatic transmission in 12.2 seconds at 118 miles per hour. The only published manual transmission Camaro SS number I found was the one with the 1LE package, and it ran 12.3 seconds at 115 miles per hour. Top speed is the next category. Even though the Mustang and the Camaro aren't going to rip a hole through the universe with top speed, they're plenty fast enough. The Mustang has an electronically limited top speed of 155 miles per hour. After doing some research online, I discovered that if the limiter is removed, it's basically up to the aerodynamics, and that it's unofficially able to get up to around 185 miles per hour. On the flip side, the Camaro is listed at 165 miles per hour. I'm sure unofficially some people have been able to get the Camaro to a higher speed, so it is what it is. Now let's hit the extra credit items. Next, let's look at the exterior dimensions of these cars. In the length category, the Mustang measures in at 188.5 inches to the Camaro's 188.3. The height comes in at 54.3 in the Mustang and 53.1 in the Camaro. And the width in the Mustang, 75.4 to the Camaro's 74.7. So the Mustang and the Camaro are pretty similarly sized, but looking at the raw numbers, the Mustang is longer and wider than the Camaro, but the Camaro is over an inch lower versus the Mustang. Next, let's look at the interior space for these cars, because the Mustang and the Camaro are frequently considered as daily drivers for many people, and the interior space is important for that reason. First, let's talk about the headroom in the front, 36.6 inches versus 38.5 in the Camaro. Now going to the headroom in the rear, Mustang at 34.8, Camaro at 33.5. Now the front legroom, 45.1 in the Mustang, 43.9 in the Camaro. Rear legroom, 29 inches Mustang, 29.9 Camaro. Hip room in the front, 54.9 to 54.5 in the Camaro. Hip room in the rear, 74.4 to the Camaro's 45.7. And finally, shoulder room in the front, 56.3 to 55 in the Camaro. And in the rear, 52.2 to 50.3 in the Camaro. Looking at these results, even though the differences are marginal, the Mustang seems to have a upper hand in most of the categories, while the Camaro has more rear legroom and front headroom. Next, we're talking about miles per gallon. Yes, I know these are sports cars, but one thing to keep in mind is that these cars need to get efficient in order to stay alive. Environmentalism is big nowadays, and sports cars are the enemies. So if you want to keep enjoying these cars, we need to talk miles per gallon. The Mustang GT with a 6-speed manual transmission comes in at 15 miles per gallon in the city and 24 on the highway for a combined rating of 18 miles per gallon. The Mustang has a fuel tank capacity of 16 gallons. The Camaro on the flip side attains 16 miles per gallon in the city and 24 on the highway for a combined average of 19 miles per gallon. The Camaro has a fuel tank capacity of 19 gallons. These cars pretty much achieve the same fuel efficiency, with the Camaro edging out the Mustang in a couple categories by 1 miles per gallon. Next, let's look at the colors. Both of these cars are fun cars to own, and both offer cool colors. Here's a picture of the available colors for the Mustang GT. I really like how Ford is offering a wide spectrum of colors in the Mustang. My personal favorite is the grabber lime with the black stripes. The Camaro offers a similar spectrum of colors to the Mustang, so feel free to pause the video and check them out. Alright, now let's wrap up the comparison with the pricing category. The Mustang GT comes in with an MSRP of $36,725, which includes destination and handling. The new Camaro LT1 comes in at $34,995, again including destination and handling. As I mentioned before, the Camaro LT1 coming in at under $35,000 for a V8 manual transmission rear-wheel drive car is an enticing deal and smart marketing from Chevrolet. Looking at the pricing difference, the Camaro undercuts the Mustang by $1,730, which may be insignificant for some, but important for others. Here's something I hadn't done before, and that's show a history of pricing throughout the generations. This chart shows the entry-level pricing for the first model year through each of these cars' generations. The first year of the Mustang, the 64.5 model, was on sale for $2,368. Anyone could have guessed these numbers are going to be much higher now, but it's interesting to see how much exactly. Some of these increases are pretty big. Now looking at the Camaro, its first model year in 67, $2,466. Again, the Camaro has some big jumps later on in the generations. A couple interesting points: in 1964, a Mustang list price was $2,368 as mentioned. When adjusted for inflation in today's dollars, that's $19,597. On the flip side, the 1967 Camaro in today's dollars would cost $20,408. The second point, both the Mustang and the Camaro saw drastic price increases in the middle of their generations. The Mustang went up almost 200% in its fourth generation, and the Camaro went up almost 190% in its third generation. Now let's wrap up this video with some of my thoughts. The Mustang and the Camaro have been around for a very long time and continue to push the performance envelope while offering great value. Cars like the Camaro ZL1 1LE, the Mustang GT 350, 350R, and the upcoming GT 500 are pushing beyond the boundaries of pony cars and are now full-fledged sports cars. As much as people dislike and poke fun at the Mustang is the godfather of the pony car. Cars like the Chevrolet Camaro, Pontiac Firebird, Plymouth Barracuda would never have existed if it wasn't for the Mustang. Let's be real and say that without the Mustang, the history of cars and where they are now may have looked very different. The Camaro is the Joker to the Mustang's Batman. Not saying the Camaro is the bad guy here, rather the point I'm trying to make is that the Camaro was the competition. Without the Camaro, the Mustang may not have been where it is today, and vice versa. Therefore, both of these cars are amazing and milestones in the history of cars, period. If I had to choose between the Mustang and the Camaro, I would choose the Mustang because of my personal bias of owning a Mustang GT 350. Otherwise, it's a toss-up. Which one would you choose? Thanks for watching. Until next time, drive steady.